So, hello everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about an RPG by Freely called Coriolis, the Third Horizon. Normally I would now be holding up the book or books, but unfortunately Coriolis, the Third Horizon is out of print, has been for quite some time, and as far as I can tell will never go back into print because it is going to be replaced by something called Coriolis, the Great Dark, which was kickstarted this year and is supposed to be shipping in 2025. And from what I can tell, the two games are completely different, and the Great Dark to me is of no interest whatsoever. I will leave this up to other critics, and people are quite unhappy about it, as far as I can tell, because if you were a fan of Coriolis, the Third Horizon, and all that makes that game great, and I will say this, too long didn't watch, I think from a setting perspective it is, in my opinion, one of the best RPGs I have ever read. From a mechanical point of view, it is old. It uses a very early version of what we have come to know as the Year Zero engine, and it has its mechanical shortfalls, which I will go into. But from what I can tell of the Great Dark, it's basically dungeon delving in space, which I have no interest in. But Coriolis, the Third Horizon. According to what I have heard and read, the guys who founded Free League came back to role-playing by playing something called Coriolis, which, as far as I can tell, was first published in Swedish. And they were so intrigued by that game that they decided, oh, let's go back into playing, and also let's go into publishing. And they took the name Free League from one of the factions in Coriolis, and then they subsequently published Coriolis, the Third Horizon. So if this story is not just apocryphal but actually true, then Coriolis, the Third Horizon would be the second edition of the Coriolis-based story, and the Great Dark would be the third. Coriolis, the Third Horizon, like I said, is based on the Year Zero engine, which means that it uses dice pools of d6s. It doesn't use the step dice mechanic, which is also found in the Year Zero engine. In this mechanic, sixes are always a success. So if you know the Alien RPG or if you know Versen, then you're familiar with this. However, in this particular incarnation of the Year Zero engine, there are different stages of success. You have a limited success, which is 1 6, and then 2 6s plus 3 6s are great successes. Essentially, how they then manifest themselves is by granting you additional bonuses. So, if you were to really drill down, you would say, well, it's like Alien, where you have like a success is a 6, but then if you have more than 1 6, you can get stunts. They also have the so-called push mechanic, whereas in Alien, when you push a roll, if you don't succeed, or if you think you would like to have more successes, you can decide to push a roll, but you gain stress dice for it, which can offer you additional 6s, but which can also offer you additional 1s, and if you roll a 1 on a stress die, you panic. In Coriolis, the Third Horizon, the mechanic is different. You can push a roll, but you do this by praying to the icons. And I really mean praying, because religion and icon worship is extremely important. It's actually one of the linchpins of the game. And the idea of being religious and praying and going to chapels and praying before you set out and do something is important, and it finds its manifestation in the rules by granting you the ability to push on the one hand, or if you go, let's say, and pray in a chapel before you set out on your adventure, you can gain additional dice to your rolls subsequently. But when you push a roll by praying to the icons, and that's the only way in which you can push a roll. You give your game master darkness points, which they can use to then influence the story to the player's detriment. And if I go and pray to an icon to push my roll, the game master gets a darkness point that they can use against anyone in the group or the group as a whole. Whereas if you incur stress in Alien, you only incur the stress yourself. Usually, sometimes when you panic, then this stress can spread. But if I push a roll, then it's only me who gains the stress. You have 4 attributes: strength, dexterity, strength, agility, wits, and empathy. And then you have 16 skills, which are associated with these 4 attributes. However, the skills are not evenly distributed. So, for example, strength only has 2 associated skills, force and melee. But wits, for example, and dexterity, and wits and agility, there we have it. I find it really difficult that they decided to switch around the terms. Wits and agility have the most skills associated with them, and in the middle is kind of empathy, that only has 4 skills associated, namely culture, command, survival, and mystic powers, because there is something that one could call magic, one could call divine powers in this game. You also have talents, which you can derive from your icon. So basically everybody should roll on the icon table and then gets basically their birth month, and that is, or segment as it's called, and then this gives you a talent associated with your icon under whose auspices you were born. Then you have the group talent, because it's played as a group, and the group has to decide on a concept that they want to play. So for example, free traders or mercenaries or whatnot, and each group concept has a talent associated that then each group member can use. And then lastly, you have a talent that is associated with your class, subclass. And classes are basically what you can do, like piloting. You can be a pilot, you can be a soldier, you can be an operative. So basically an operative would then be split out across spy, assassin, and I want to say agitator. So, and you have 3 types of pilots. You have pilots that pilot vehicles, land vehicles. You've got fighter pilots and freighter pilots. So you see where this is going. So if you've played D&D, for example, 5th edition, then you have, let's say, a cleric, and then the cleric is life, light, death, what have you. And one thing that is different from other game engines like 5th edition D&D, or let's say the Dark Eye, the skills are not equal. There are common skills, like, for example, observation, dexterity, melee combat, ranged combat. And then there are advanced skills, which are associated usually with the subclass, with the job that you do. So one of them would be piloting, for example, or medicurge, which is basically medical skills, healing, or data gin, which is the ability to really program computers and do a lot of things with computers that normal people can't. Everybody is pretty much computer literate. They can basically use tablets, they can use communicators, but to actually program a computer, you need a special skill, or advanced skill in this case. And in this game system, if you don't have any ranks, in an advanced skill, you cannot roll. So if I have very high wits, but I don't have data gin or technology or science as an advanced skill, I'm not allowed to make a roll, which I find really nice, because I, as a player, for example, don't roll on certain skills in D&D if I don't have proficiency in them, because I also believe that they are so specialized that I, as a, let's say, cleric, shouldn't really be able to roll on them, because the people always say, well, you can always roll a 20. Yes, you can, but to me there are certain things that I cannot do. It's like in real life. I mean, I can fill my car with petrol, and I can put in oil, and I can basically replace the washing fluid, so that I can actually use my the internal washing for the screens. But the thing is, I cannot repair a car. Of course, I could roll on it and then hopefully like open up the hood and hope for the best. But even rolling a natural 20 wouldn't really help, because the systems we're dealing with are so complex that you simply, it's beyond hope to do this. It is so improbable that it is impossible. And I would say the same goes for, let's say, my cleric rolling on Arcana. She doesn't know anything about Arcana. To her, Arcana is weird. She believes that all the power comes from the divine, comes from the gods, and especially her own god. And of course, those magic users, they're just weird, so this is... and I always hated, for example, when people then start rolling on things that they know nothing about, especially when an atheist starts rolling on knowledge religion. I'm like, why are you rolling this? You are an atheist. You have no knowledge of the gods. Because I think to make it open for everybody devalues specialization. And here they have done it differently by saying, if you don't have this advanced skill, you simply can't do it. And I really like that, because it means that you have a diversification in the group. And if you have somebody who can do medical stuff, then it's them who can do the medical stuff. Pilots, it's only them who can who can use piloting. And I think this is really great. Like I said, you've got agility and you've got the attributes agility, strength, wits, and empathy, and you can distribute points in those, and then you can distribute skill points in the skills, and you can only distribute your advanced skill points for the class that you have. They have added another layer, which we discussed last night over dinner, which we both really liked, and that is that they have different types of upbringing. You have the plebeian upbringing, the stationary upbringing, and the privileged upbringing. They are associated with different levels of starting income that you bring to the table, but also with a different distribution between skill points and attribute points. If you're a plebeian, so basically that is the diamond in the rough, maybe even closer to nature, etc., has it rough, they have 15 attribute points. And remember, when you create a dice pool, you add the skill rank. Let's say you have a rank of 3 in piloting, and you add it to your agility score, which in this case may be, let's say, 5, because you're a pilot, then you would roll 8 dice in total. And they say basically for the plebeian, you have 15 in attributes and 8 in skills. For the stationary, you have the 14 in attributes and 10 in skills, which is the same as in the Alien RPG where you have 14 and 10. And then in the privileged section, you have 13 in the attributes and only 12 in... you have 13 in the attributes and 12 in skills. Why is that? Well, it's because as a privileged person, you have more possibilities of studying, of learning, but maybe your nature-given traits are less diversified because you don't work as hard physically, so you're less strong. You may, you have been using technology, so maybe your wits are, a little bit duller, things like that. And I mean, one could question if 15-8, 14-10, 13-12 is fair, because also, of course, the plebeian starts with a lot less money, and also their reputation is a lot less. Reputation can come into play. But I like it. It means that if you are an underdog, you really are an underdog. You have more natural skills or natural attributes, they are higher, but you are simply unskilled. And it's harder for you to do things. I would say that probably if you're a min-maxer, everybody will try to go for privilege. So basically then the DM will have to say, well, sorry, no, we need a good mix. I, for example, would not actually let anybody play privileged because, I would find it difficult to see how this would work. I would say either plebeian or stationary. This is how they have put this into practice, and I really like it. I think it's a very nice touch, because it's a lot like the background in 2024 5.5e, where it's not so much your species anymore. You don't get attribute bonuses from that, but you get any attribute bonuses that you do get from your background, which basically tells everybody what you have been through, how life has shaped you, and I really, really like that. Then of course you have the talents, like I said, they are very specialized. With regard to the icon talents, I have to say that they are super imbalanced. There are some that are really good, and then there are some that are actually crap, where I'm like, well, I mean, if somebody rolls this as their own icon, and if you play mercenaries, it's not going to help at all. Even when you play, let's say, there's one where you can basically get a good deal on something, but then you still have to pay off the deal that you got. You get a module or something, but then you still have to pay. So I'm not sure what kind of a talent that is supposed to be. I would say if you manage to get something for free that would normally cost, let's say, X thousand burr, then that's a talent. But like just to say that you can get a good deal, whatever that means, because it's not specified, then and then you have others that really basically allow you to negate damage once, or that kind of thing. So I would say that the talents as they are at the moment are not usable, because they are weirdly distributed, and some of them simply are crap. So I would really change them. I would also not make my players roll on which talent they should get from the icon, but basically choose which kind of icon they want to affiliate with. And I think that makes perfect sense, because you can then also say, instead of being governed by the stars, you can also say, I choose one of the icons that basically best supports my own outlook on life, and I worship this. Like, I mean, the Romans, they didn't just worship anyone. They decided which of the gods was going to help them at this moment in time. Or if you go to Japan and people go to shrines, they go to the shrines of the kami that they think can help them now in this particular situation, rather than saying this is my kami of birth, and if it happens to be a kami that has nothing that I would need from life, then so be it, I can't pray. So I actually would go down this route. Also, of course, one of the big contentions in my mind is darkness points. I don't like them. I will not use them. I think pushing rolls is important. I would allow it, but I would actually use the stress mechanic straight from Alien, because I love it. It's simple, and it makes it possible to introduce complications for an individual player rather than the whole group. And also, I honestly don't understand why you have games where they basically have an in-the-face, whack your players over the head system like Darkness Points. Or I remember we played Star Wars once, and that had a similar mechanic where I'm like, no, I mean that's not. If the game master thinks that they need to intercede in the game and make something happen, they can do it. But it should, but to my mind, it should be organic. And if, for example, through good rolling or excellent role playing or even plain deduction that the players have at the table, certain things are set in motion that maybe I, as the game master, wouldn't have wanted to happen or not at this moment in time, then either I've written a bad adventure, or I should actually congratulate myself on having such engaged players that would move the story along. And then to artificially put the brakes on just because and use darkness points, you know, I find that that's first of all a cheap cop-out for bad GMs, but also for me as a player, it would take the fun out of things. So no darkness points in my game. The next thing that I would like to talk about is spaceships, because everybody has a spaceship and it's very important. So they do say that they take quite a lot of inspiration from Firefly, and I really love this idea. However, I was a bit, maybe it's because I really like spreadsheets. I would have wanted to see the same thing as they did in Alien, where you have like ships, they have module spaces that you can fill, and then you have a list and it tells you how big a module is, and then you can sit down and actually decide what you want to put in there. I haven't really seen that. I have seen plenty of blueprints that are already ready, where you can basically say, this is the ship we're going to use. So I'm actually going to take the stuff from Alien, because it's also modular, but it's also a lot more user-friendly. And of course, again, the idea is you don't own the ship outright, but you have somebody, a patron, who has been granting you money, and you have to pay them back, which of course is the incentive for the players to go out there and start flying around. I mean, in Alien, I think you need the incentive even more, because in Alien, space is terrible and everything is horrifying, and either space is empty or it's trying to kill you. Not so in Coriolis, but I'll talk about this when I talk about the setting itself. So that's something that I'm going to change, and of course combat. The combat system basically uses dice pools and an action point system. And basically, if you are like me, a war gamer, then you're very familiar with action points, and they have no role in role playing, unless of course you spell role playing ROLL playing. In role playing ROLE, we don't need this, and any system that has overcomplicated fighting, like Hero Quest or Rune Quest, or even Midgard, are games that, you know, I will not play. Because combat, yes, it's important, but if I want to play a simulation game, I'm going to play a simulation game. I'm going to go back to Chainmail, which is the mother of all RPGs, from which Dungeons and Dragons was derived. But if you say, on the one hand, you're a storytelling game by introducing darkness points, which are sort of storytelling devices, or so they say, but then on the other hand, you have action points, no, then there is something amiss here. So the way action points work is you have action points and you can spend them, and once you have run out of action points in your round, and different actions cost different numbers of points, you can't do anything anymore. So if someone attacks you, and it's a lot like Vampire the Masquerade or Chronicles of Darkness, and their fighting system sucks. I mean, everybody has been discussing this and people have been modifying it, and some people even say we forego fighting in my game completely because it simply doesn't work. So how this works is, if somebody attacks you, they roll their attack. So it's either melee or ranged, and then they may have modifiers, more dice if they have, let's say, a weapon or whatnot, and then they roll this many dice. Then you have to make a decision. Do you want to defend, in which case you can't attack anymore on your round, on your turn, when it's your turn? Weird. Or do you just, and you have to, you know, then still roll your armor. So I would say, in order for this to work, the person has to declare if they're going to defend even before the dice are rolled. Because then if somebody rolls and attacks me and they have 0 hits, then I can say, oh yeah, I'm not defending, so I'm going to save this. No, for me, that wouldn't work. That would be metagaming. So you have to make a decision. As somebody says, I'm attacking you, are you going to defend? And then if they roll no attacks, you still don't defend, because if they roll no successes, they still attacked you. They just missed, possibly because you decided to defend. So to me, you know, that's when the system falls down, which is why the system will be completely changed. How this works is, when we play, you as an attacker have X amount of X number of dice in your dice pool. We then compare this to the armor rating of the person who's being attacked, plus any modifiers due to cover. So let's say I have 8 attacking you, and you have an armor of 5, I get to roll 3 dice. That's my attack. You don't defend, you just see, do I hit you? If I hit you, you take damage. If I don't hit you, fine. So it's a lot like the system that you would find in D&D, where you roll against an armor class, which isn't just what you are wearing, but which also depends on your, in this case, dexterity attribute modifier, because armor class isn't just, do I wear plate mail, but also how nimble am I? How can I position myself? And if I'm very dexterous, like for example a monk is, when they don't wear armor, they have a very high armor class based on their dexterity and wisdom, because they're kind of able to use their surroundings, the environment, but also their body to escape from people attacking them. And so here we're going to do the same thing. You can roll, at least you will always get to roll 1 attack die. If you have incurred stress before, that 1 die is going to be a stress die. So you have a 1 in 6 chance to hit, but you've got a 1 in 6 chance to trigger a panic attack. And basically you have, and this is what I would take from the Alien role-playing game again, you have 1 fast action and 1 slow action, or 2 fast actions on your turn. And there is no such thing as dodging, there's no such thing as defending yourself. It's to run, to aim, to attack, to stabilize somebody who's down. So basically I will even probably cut down on the number of things you can do. To really make it easier and to really avoid this, oh yeah, okay, now I have to make a decision. Do I want to defend? You know, you don't defend. You have natural armor, you have armor that you're wearing, you may be hiding or something, and if you don't, then you will take the full brunt of the attack. Because, I mean, how are you going to dodge a bullet? You can't. How are you going to defend against the bullet? You can't. You know, it's like not happening. And so, to me, that is the changes that I would make. No darkness points, stress mechanic from Alien, building ships from Alien, and a completely different fighting system. With regard to space fight, the way this works is that they say that you need to have 5 players. That would be ideal, because in space fights there are 5 battle stations to man. But, you know, I think this is optional, and I think you can also have a ship with 2 people, and of course then a good Mother or Apollo system. They also have ships' intelligences, but they don't really have any stats. I would also change that in order to be sure that if there is space combat, the group stands a chance. Which now brings me to the setting. Now, the setting is described as Arabian Nights in space. And there are a lot of things that remind you of Islam and of North Africa. For example, a lot of the worship is very reminiscent of Islam. So, for example, there are certain rites that have been introduced. One of them is you have to go on pilgrimage, which of course is true. Everybody should be, if you're a Muslim, you should go on Hajj at least once in your lifetime. You should give alms. You should pray twice a day, and things like that. You should also use a prayer rug if possible. What is, of course, unlike Islam is the fact that they have more than one god, namely 9, and they're icons, and they also depict them. Whereas, of course, in Islam, it's forbidden to depict the human form, and even animals cannot be depicted. You can only show, other things from nature, like and of course, fantasy and imaginative patterns or whatnot. The names are derived from, or are even Arabic names like Fatma, etc. And the way the society on especially Coriolis works is, of course, you've got tea houses and that kind of thing where chai is served, and people use hookah pipes and that kind of thing. So that is there. We have to remind ourselves this was 2018 or something, so a lot of people might now shout, oh my god, this is cultural appropriation. No, it isn't. It's just that for once, in all of the RPGs that I know, they haven't drawn on Western, Christian, Romano-Greek backgrounds. And that is interesting. I mean, of course, you will always have something like, the odd Japanese one, Legend of the Five Rings, but usually it's Greco-Roman, Christian, Judean background. And the backstory to this is that a long, long time ago, maybe 1,100 years ago, 2 ships left an Earth that was pretty much dying, torn by wars and full of, and essentially nature having given up the fight against humans. And there were 2 huge colonial ships, the Zenith and the Nadir. So basically the top of the circle and the bottom of the circle, 2 Arabic terms as well. And they contained thousands upon thousands of colonists that were in cryo-sleep, as well as families that had different roles on board the ship. There was the family that would be the captains, there was the family that would be the pilots, and so on and so forth. And these families knew that they would be reproducing on board, would give birth and would die during that travel, during that journey, because it would take them thousands or 1,000 years to get to places where they hoped that mankind could settle. And they traveled, like I said, for 1,000 years. And at some point, the Nadir was lost, or contact to the Nadir was lost. And then it was only Zenith on its own. And then Zenith arrived in a part of the universe that we actually know. It is the part where Algol and Rigel are. And they found that there were humans there. That was really weird, because when they had left Earth, humans had only been there on Earth and nowhere else. They were supposed to be the pioneers. They were supposed to be the ones that were going to try and spread mankind and, and find new places to live. What had happened in the meantime, because 1,000 years is a very long time, was that humans had found something from Earth that was called the portals. And these portals were built by the portal builders, nobody knows who they were, and allowed travel between star systems. So, and instantaneous travel at that. So no faster than light travel in this case, so not like an alien where you have FTL drives, but a way to jump. And while Zenith and Nadir were basically trundling through space, mankind started hopping. And they hopped to something called the second horizon, where they spread and settled. And then they hopped to something called the third horizon, which is also where Zenith then encountered humans again. And there was then a war, the Portal Wars, where the first and second horizon tried to bring down the third horizon. But the third horizon, in a last-ditch effort, led by the Church of the Pariah, which is a very religious order that has, or Order of the Pariah, that has a huge military presence. I always think of them as the Crusaders, like the Pope with his army. And I want to say the Legion brought down the first and second horizon invaders, but the portals crashed or were closed down, and the whole third horizon fell into something called the Long Dark because they lost the ability to navigate through the portals, because it's not just you go in there and then you come out at the other end, but you have to find a way to actually, I don't know, maybe calibrate the force field, whatever. There's a lot of algorithm, and again, that's an Arabic word, and algebra required, and a lot of mathematics to make this happen. And basically, if they use starships, they only use them within their solar system. So that would be us traveling to Mars, for example. That's still a long ways away, but it's by no means traveling from one galaxy to another, to another, to another. Or star system to another, to another, to another. And then the Zenith arrived. And the Zenith realized that there's now an issue. We were supposed to colonize and populate these empty space, but now it's no longer empty. What do we do? And there was dissent aboard the Zenith between three different families. The family of the captain, the family of the pilots, and I don't remember what the third family was. But the captain said, we need to keep going because it's our mission to colonize empty space. The second family said, oh no, now that mankind has already spread, our mission is null and void. We should just wake the colonists. They were still in cryosleep at that moment, and just, stop and basically, settle now. And the third group was like, oh, this whole dispute is leading us nowhere. And they just went away and opened the cryotubes and just released everybody. And then in the chaos that ensued, left. They became the Draconites. And although they are Zenithians, they are now numbered amongst the first come, because this is now the split. You have the first come, namely the people who jumped from Earth through the second horizon to the third horizon and settled, and then the Zenithians who made the journey. They took the low road, the others took the high road, but they were both in Scotland at some point. So this is now a big divide. Now the first comers basically are strong icon worshippers. They are all very religious, whereas the Zenithians are more pragmatic, they are more technology oriented, and they have actually managed to revive portal travel. So now the third horizon is open again. You can use your ship to jump from portal to portal. And this has led to basically the situation that we have today. And that is that there are different factions. There are first comers that have factions, and then there are the Zenithians that also have factions. There are also, one of the Zenithian factions is actually a large a conglomerate of large corporations. You've also got the Free League. In the old world, you've got the Order of the Pariah. You've got the Draconites, which are Zenithians, but which are now counted amongst the first comers. There's also the nomads in the first come that basically travel like caravans through the desert. They have caravans traveling through open space. And in order to avoid further bloodshed, because the portal wars were terrifying and led to a dwindling population, and the long dark actually meant darkness came, and the third horizon was essentially cut off from technology and from imports from the first and second horizon. So they also lost certain technologies, and so their technology level dwindled. But now with the Zenithians arriving, which I find always a bit interesting, because the Zenithians would have come from, let's say, Earth in the year 2300 with Earth's technology of 2300, whereas the jumping would have happened later, so the technologies would have been more advanced, but still it's the Zenithians that have the superior technology. I'm not quite sure that I buy into this concept when I think about it, but anyway, the Zenithians have opened up trade again. They have made it possible for some reason. They were able to figure out how this whole portal jumping worked, and of course, being the merchants that they are, they've now monopolized the jumping. So basically, if you don't jump with somebody calculating all of your coordinates, it's very dangerous. And jumping can only happen while you're in cryosleep, because you will go crazy if you're not in cryosleep, because when you jump, you encounter the darkness between the stars, and that is terrifying. So anyway, this is the situation. And in order to ensure that no bloodshed will ever happen again, there's a council on Coriolis. Now, Coriolis is a space station that orbits the world of Kua, which is where the Zenith later on decided, or earlier on decided, to basically set down roots. Several Zenithian families basically then went planetside and have built a beautiful city there, and have colonized the country, the world, and they dismantled the Zenith and built Coriolis, which is a huge space station, which is kind of like, if you like, the fulcrum around which the third horizon circles. And there's now this council, and the factions, not all of them, the nomads, for example, don't have a seat, but it's being debated that they should. Try to make sure that if there are conflicts, and there are plenty, if there are conflicts, that they are resolved peacefully, and then something happens. The emissaries arrive. The emissaries are beings, creatures from Sehen, which is a gas giant in the Kua system. There is 5 of them, and they spread through the third horizon, and they say that they are the icons incarnate. So there are 5 at the moment, since there are 9 icons. Presumably there are 4 more somewhere. And the one that says that they represent, or that they are the incarnation of, the judge icon, is the one that demanded and got a seat on the council. Now, the problem with an entity saying, oh, basically, I'm one of your gods, is that anybody who worships that god will say, what now? And that's exactly what happens, because the Order of the Pariah goes, what now? And basically consider all of this sacrilege, heresy, have closed themselves off, don't allow people to travel through their system anymore, and demand the emissary that is to be extradited and unless this happens, they will not talk to anyone else, and they threaten military action. So that's the situation. And this is an interesting situation to be in. You have the factions that have very different interests that come together and ally for a certain amount of time in order to basically get whatever they want. You know, if it's in my interest and if it's in your interest, we may be sworn enemies, but maybe on this particular topic we should ally and work together, much like in the real world that we live in. But it's also the idea of exploring space and exploring and finding new worlds that you can play. Only, unlike Alien, this world isn't empty. There are inhabited planets and plenty of them. Whereas in Alien, unless it's human, it's not there. I mean, okay, Coriolis, all right, is also humans. There are some humanoids which are basically something like robots, somehow base humans that have been wed with technology. It's kind of odd, and I have, because they're not bionic people, because they also exist, you can have a lot of bionic modifications. But anyway, this is space that has been successfully colonized, but through the isolation after the Portal Wars, different cultures have deepened their unique traits, because if you are cut off, you're an island, and then you will basically fall back on yourself, and you know that we all know where that leads. So there's a lot to explore. So you can of course then play this completely differently. You can say, okay, you want a military campaign where everybody plays a mercenary, where you have like a fighter ship, and you start going on military expeditions. Or you can say, oh, I'm an archaeologist, and I'm more interested in learning more about what was here before. Who were the portal builders? Because they have not only left the portals, they have also left other artifacts that can be uncovered and can be analyzed, that can be sold, that can be smuggled. There's also slave trade, which everybody doesn't like, but you know, you could, for example, maybe not engage in slave trade, but you could try and combat that. You could be the science group that tries to find out more about where does everything come from. You could be the pilgrims that basically travel the system in order to follow the pilgrimage path that you should in order to worship the icons. You can be free traders. You can do whatever you like. You can transport people, said pilgrims. You can even be a troupe, a traveling circus. That's actually a concept, that you can have traveling circus. And basically then, you know, do a little bit on the side, work as spies, work as information carriers, because information cannot travel through portals. In order to get information from one portal to the next, what you have to do is you have to put the information onto a probe, send the probe through, and then the probe will start broadcasting at the far end. Or you give it to somebody and they will go through and then provide the information to whoever. So that's quite interesting as well. So there's a plethora of things you can do. You could also say, well, hey, we're buccaneers, we're pirates, space pirates. They're called corsairs. You can be the Robin Hoods trying to fend off the large corporations, that kind of thing. So there is so much you can do, and you have all of this backdrop of the souk, the bazaar. You have the mysticism that is inherent in icon worship. And another thing that is happening at the moment is that with the advent of the emissaries, suddenly people are beginning to show mystical powers, which we would call magic, which somebody else might call divinely derived powers. And they are being hunted because, first of all, the church considers this sacrilege again. And, you know, if somebody's different, and I'm not talking about bionically enhanced different, but can, let's say, use their thoughts to move objects, that's spooky. We don't want this. This is different. And even in a society where you have so many ways in which humans can be changed, and humanites even exist as well, although there's still a debate, do they have a soul or not? That's also a very interesting part that you could engage with. If you have a humanoid in your group, do they have a soul? If somebody were to say, oh, all humanoids must be corralled because they are getting too powerful, what are you going to do about your body? Are you going to just throw them under the bus, or are you going to protect them? So these are all things that can happen. What happens if you fall foul of your patron? Or do you just take your ship and run? You know, so there are lots of things that you can engage in. Everybody, do they have a faction? Do they all have the same faction? Do they have different factions? What is their family background? So this is a huge tapestry. I mean, this is going to be like a story of 1,001 Nights. I mean, this is like a tapestry that you can weave with your group, which is a lot more colorful and vibrant than the dystopia that is Alien. And I have to say, I really love the idea of an Alien role-playing game, and I am still saying I will run a couple of those short scenarios. And I know that campaign play is possible, but Coriolis just gets me. It really, really impresses me. I really love the backdrop. I really love the stories that are possible. And although there are some issues that I have with the actual mechanics, that doesn't matter because you can make your own. If you don't like how things are done, just do them differently. It's absolutely possible. You can even go online, and I have to say this one more time. There is the SRD for the year 0, which is freely available, which you are welcome to use. Free League says you can use it, you can build it, you can take it, you can build your own game around it. You have to give them credit, but that's it. You don't have to pay them money or anything. It's completely open. It's an open free-for-all. And you can then say, okay, well, maybe I want different skills. Maybe I don't like the way they are distributed. Maybe I don't like, the way the point system works. I want to change this. I want to go with one point system for everybody. So for example, or even how health is calculated. So in Alien, health is calculated, I want to say it's your stamina or something. Here it's your agility plus your strength and your mind points, which are in this case something like stress, but which we won't be using, but which you could use for your mystic powers because you have to use them somehow, you have to power them somehow. You can take your wits and your empathy and add them together, and that's even if you were to use the SRD for building your fantasy role-playing game with spells, which are in the SRD. There are spells in there, fully statted. You can say, okay, I'm going to take my wits and my empathy, and I add them together, and that's the number of points that I have to use in order to cast my spells. So that's how you can do it. So the mechanics are absolutely secondary. You can change them as you like, because nobody says that anything needs to be balanced. But it's the story, and it's the backdrop, and it's the setting that really get me. And I have to say, I'm really looking forward to playing this. It's going to be a while before we do it, but I really, really am already looking forward to this. So, Coriolis, the Third Horizon, is no longer available in print. And as far as I can tell, it's never going to go back into print. But you can get the PDFs on drive-through, and what I did was I got it, and I actually printed it out at a printer's, and I had it bound. So now I've got my own Coriolis book that I can use because I really like reading books. I don't like reading PDFs so much because, I spend all my days at the computer reading. I don't want to read computer screens in my spare time, and I can only recommend it. And please also go on YouTube and check out those playthroughs for Coriolis. Because there are several adventures, and they can and they give you a good insight into the story, but also how the game works. There is one last point that I would like to make, and that is that there's a lot of mystery in there, And lots of things are not explained. So, for example, what happened to the nadir? Did it just get lost? Was it more sinister? And in one podcast that I was listening to, one of the people who were talking about Coriolis is actually an Arabic speaker. And he said the Arabic word nadir actually means something other than nadir, which of course is the opposite of the zenith, which is where they take their name from. And he said it could be coincidence, but maybe it isn't. Nadir means harbinger. So it's up to us to think about this. Maybe the nadir isn't the nadir, but the nadir, and it's a harbinger of something. And maybe at some point we will come across that ship, and we will see what portents it brings. Talk to you soon. Bye.